It's 3 a.m. The ground in the Iranian desert doesn't just shake, it roars. A massive American bunker buster has just pierced 300 feet of solid rock, vaporizing a secret nuclear base the world wasn't even supposed to know existed. In that single second, the red line is crossed. But this isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a global nightmare. Within hours, gas prices double, the stock market enters a free fall, and a ring of fire ignites across the Middle East. We are no longer talking about a surgical strike. We are talking about the moment the dominoes started falling toward World War III. The United States has just executed a massive, highly coordinated strike against Iran's most secretive nuclear facility, located deep beneath the jagged peaks of the Zagros Mountains. In a single violent instant, the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East and the entire world has shifted. For decades, this specific action was the red line that analysts, diplomats, and military leaders talked about in hushed tones, representing the ultimate hypothetical scenario in global security. Now, it is no longer a theory, but a stark and terrifying reality. To truly grasp the gravity of what follows, we must examine the immediate kinetic aftermath on the ground, the desperate and tense hours within the White House Situation Room, and the rapidly cascading series of international events that could push the planet toward a global catastrophe. The physical strike itself likely commenced in the silent hours of the pre-dawn darkness to maximize surprise and minimize the effectiveness of surface defenses. Elite stealth bombers, having navigated through some of the most sophisticated integrated air defense systems in the world, deployed specialized bunker buster munitions designed to drill through hundreds of feet of reinforced concrete and solid granite. On the surface, the desert floor would have buckled and heaved with the force of a localized man-made earthquake as the shock waves traveled through the earth. Inside the base, the destruction is total, turning cutting-edge laboratories and centrifuge halls into a tomb of twisted metal and rubble. This was not intended as a mere warning shot or a diplomatic nudge. It was a decapitation strike aimed at the very heart of Iran's nuclear ambitions, intended to set their technical capabilities back by decades in a matter of minutes. However, as the dust and smoke begin to settle over the scorched mountain range, the real danger to global stability is only just beginning to materialize. In the capital city of Tehran, the response is instantaneous and fueled by a mixture of shock and calculated fury. This event is not viewed by the Iranian leadership as a surgical military operation or a targeted counter-proliferation effort, but as an existential declaration of total war. Within minutes of the first explosions, the Supreme National Security Council is convened in an emergency underground bunker. Iran's military doctrine has long anticipated and prepared for this exact moment of confrontation. They are acutely aware that they cannot win a conventional ship-to-ship or plane-to-plane war against the overwhelming might of United States carrier strike groups. Consequently, they pivot immediately to asymmetric warfare, utilizing every non-traditional tool at their disposal. This is the poison pill strategy, a deeply cynical but effective doctrine based on the idea that if Iran is forced to suffer a devastating blow, the rest of the world must be forced to suffer alongside them. The first move in this retaliatory campaign takes place in the narrow, turbulent waters of the Strait of Hormuz. This vital choke point is the primary jugular vein of the global economy, with approximately 20% of the world's daily oil supply passing through its shipping lanes. Iranian fast attack boats, swarming in large numbers, and mobile coastal missile batteries begin targeting commercial tankers regardless of their national origin. Sophisticated sea mines, which may have been covertly seeded weeks or months in advance in anticipation of such a conflict, now drift silently into the paths of massive cargo vessels. Global oil markets react with a level of panic never before seen in modern history. Within mere hours of the reported strike, the price of crude oil spikes by $40 or $50 a barrel. In major cities across the globe, the cost of gasoline at the pump doubles or triples overnight, sending devastating shockwaves through every sector of the global economy, from shipping and agriculture to consumer goods and air travel. Simultaneously, a regional network, often referred to as the Ring of Fire, ignites with ferocious intensity. Iran's vast network of regional proxies and allied militias, including Hezbollah in Lebanon, various armed groups in Iraq, and the Houthis in Yemen, receive the coded order to activate their contingency plans. Northern Israel suddenly finds itself under a relentless barrage of thousands of rockets and precision-guided missiles, a volume of fire designed to overwhelm even the most advanced defense systems, like the Iron Dome. In Iraq and Syria, United States military bases and diplomatic outposts are swarmed by suicide drone strikes and heavy mortar fire. The conflict is no longer a contained disagreement between two sovereign nations. It is rapidly transformed into a sprawling, multi-front regional conflagration that threatens to draw in every neighboring state. Inside the halls of power in Washington, the atmosphere is characterized by a grim, heavy determination masked by layers of intense anxiety. The administration releases official statements arguing that the strike was a necessary preemptive measure to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran from destabilizing the world, but the secondary effects of the mission are mounting much faster than the initial models predicted. The president addresses the nation from the Oval Office, calling for calm and unity, but the stock market is already in a state of freefall as investors flee to safe haven assets. Domestic political pressure begins to mount almost immediately as the public realizes that what was promised to be a surgical and limited strike has instead led to a massive, open-ended commitment of American troops, ships, and financial resources. The transition from a counter-proliferation mission to a full-scale war happens in the blink of an eye. As the days turn into weeks, the true humanitarian and environmental cost of the operation becomes painfully visible to the world. The initial strike, while technically aimed at military targets, may have unintentionally released radioactive particulates into the atmosphere, even though the deep burial of the facility was specifically intended to prevent such a leak. Fear of nuclear fallout spreads like wildfire through neighboring countries, leading to mass migrations and a collapse of local borders. Within Iran, the population, including many who were previously critical of the regime's policies, begins to rally around the national flag in a surge of defensive patriotism. The government in Tehran uses the strike as a convenient justification to implement even more extreme domestic crackdowns, labeling all dissent as treason and silencing political opposition under the heavy guise of wartime national security and survival. International diplomacy quickly enters a state of total paralysis as the United Nations Security Council becomes locked in a bitter and seemingly permanent stalemate. Russia and China issue strongly worded condemnations of the United States' actions, viewing the strike as an illegal act of unprovoked aggression and a violation of international law. They begin providing covert intelligence, advanced electronic warfare equipment, and logistical support to Tehran, effectively turning the conflict into a high-stakes, high-tech proxy war. The risk of a direct, unintended military clash between nuclear-armed superpowers becomes higher than it has been at any point since the height of the Cold War. The world watches with bated breath as the major powers maneuver their assets in a dangerous game of brinksmanship where a single mistake could trigger a global catastrophe. The battleground now expands into the invisible realm of cyber warfare, and this phase of the conflict is particularly chilling because it bypasses traditional borders. This is not just about defacing government websites or spreading propaganda. It is a concerted effort to dismantle critical civilian infrastructure. Iranian-linked hacking groups, potentially aided by foreign specialists, begin targeting the United States power grid, municipal water treatment plants, and the digital foundations of the global financial system. Small towns and major cities alike find themselves facing sudden blackouts and service disruptions, not because of a physical attack or a natural disaster, but because of a digital virus born from a conflict thousands of miles away. The front line of the war has moved from the Iranian desert directly into every home and business connected to the internet, making every citizen a potential victim of the unfolding chaos. Back in the Middle East, the cycle of escalation is proving nearly impossible to break, as each move triggers a more violent countermove.
Israel, facing what it perceives as an existential threat from the massive rocket stockpiles of Hezbollah, launches a full-scale ground invasion of southern Lebanon to create a buffer zone. This move draws in more regional actors and turns the entire Levant into a chaotic, multi-sided battlefield. The United States is forced to divert more and more carrier strike groups and air wings from other parts of the world to the region, leaving the Indo-Pacific theater vulnerable and inadvertently emboldening other global rivals to make their own aggressive moves in contested territories. The strategic overextension of the American military becomes a primary concern for defense planners as the conflict consumes more resources than anyone anticipated.
The long-term geopolitical and psychological consequences of the strike are perhaps the most frightening aspect of the entire scenario. While the strike might have successfully destroyed the physical infrastructure of a specific nuclear program, it cannot destroy the theoretical knowledge and engineering expertise held by the scientists who designed it. If anything, the attack serves as a powerful confirmation to the Iranian leadership and other nations around the world that the only true way to prevent a foreign invasion or a decapitation strike is to possess a functional nuclear deterrent. The global non-proliferation regime, which has held together for decades, lies in ruins. Other middle power nations begin to reconsider their own security postures, wondering if they too must acquire the ultimate weapon to ensure their national survival in an increasingly unpredictable and violent world. Months later, a fragile and exhausted ceasefire might finally be brokered through back-channel negotiations, but the world that emerges from the smoke is fundamentally and permanently changed. The trust between major world powers is shattered, replaced by a deep and pervasive suspicion. The global economy remains scarred by the massive energy shock and the disruption of trade routes. The Middle East is even more fractured, radicalized, and heavily armed than it was before the first bombs fell. We are left with the somber realization that while launching a strike is a matter of hours and technical precision, surviving the cascading aftermath is a matter of generations. The massive strike on the secret base was intended to buy security and stability, but in the end, it may have simply unlocked a Pandora's box of chaos that no one is truly prepared to close. The fuse has been lit, and the world is holding its breath. If you found this breakdown of modern conflict chilling, make sure to hit that subscribe button. For more deep dives into the strategies, the weapons, and the harrowing stories of global warfare, past and present, you're in the right place. This is WW2 Diaries. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next dispatch.